The cat didn't blink when the first drop of blood hit the floor of Michael Jackson. It's Unit 19. It watched his hand, still trembling where the shard of plate glass had sliced deep, as crimson pooled on the linoleum. His dull blue. The stinging wasn't the blood. It's heat, but it's presence, a chemical sharpness coating his tongue like swallowing battery acid. He pressed a ragged T-shirt against the gash, the fabric instantly darkening. Focus, see. He ordered himself, blinking back the hazy afterimage of the glass. He'd just been cutting an onion. The knife had slipped simple, but the slice wasn't trained on the knife's path. It was deeper, later deliberate. He hadn't just cut himself. Something had cut him into his own skin. The apartment hadn't felt right since the plumber left yesterday. His movements too precise, his humming just slightly off. Key, but Michael ignored it, dragging himself to the sink to rinse the rag. That's when he noticed the faint greasy stinkin' clinging to the tiles beneath the disinfectant. It smelled like burnt plastic and old milk, souring in the air. He glanced at the cat, Commander perched on the counter. The cat wasn't a tabby, but a stark, solid black with eyes like obsidian chips. It wasn't watching him. It was staring at the wall opposite the sink. The one with the slight, unsettling give, where the plaster bulged inward like a hidden organ under flesh. Commander! His tail flicked once, a slow, disdainful twitch, not in fear but recognition. Michael's breath hitched. The wall breathed. Not a sigh, but a subtle rhythmic pool, as if the drywall were a second skin stretching over a different kind of body. He leaned closer, the stinging blood making his eyes water. The plaster near the bulb was cool, unnaturally so, yet the air above it vibrated. He tried to pull away, but his shoulder didn't move. A phantom pressure, like a cold hand on his back, held him rooted. He could feel the fine texture of the intrusion now, not paint or plaster, but something thick, yielding, almost twin-wet, like glistening under skin tissue beneath the facade. A wet, sucking whoosh seemed to come from the wall itself, the sound of silk tearing in slow motion. Commander hopped down, ignoring Michael. It padded to the source, head low, sniffing the bulge. The cat stopped, rose, and gave a single sharp pie-meow, not a sound of alarm, but of pure, clinical observation. Here it is, the sound said. Here is the trespass, Michael jerked back as if burned. His fingertips scraped the kitchen counter, but the surface was now tacky, as if smeared with oil. He looked down at his hand. No blood. The cut was sealed, healing too fast. The rag turned white. The only evidence was the wall, its bulge now pulsing a slow, sickly fopple beneath the fluorescent light. It wasn't just presence. It was a living breach. Commander sat, washing a paw with deliberate calm, the perfect unblinking witness to the horror of his home becoming a wound. Michael, as throat locked. Wheaty was in the walls, Footy was inside his skin, and the cat knew. It had always known. The stinging wasn't blood. It was the furtive recognition. Michael's fingers touched the bulge, not to investigate, but to seal it, to press the wrongness back into place. The drywall yielded like a blister about to split. The instant his skin met it, cold seeped through his knuckles, sharper than the gash's sting, a damp chill that bit deeper than rain. He jerked his hand back, but the pressure held, a cold thumb pressing between his ribs. The wall's pulse quickened. Thump, 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 thump. A wet rhythm matching the frantic beat beneath his collarbone. Commander padded ahead, black fur drinking the fluorescent light, tail held high like a question mark. It stopped before the bathroom door, claws clicking softly on tile. The cat's head tilted, lips drawn back in a silent snarl, not rage but hunger for the source. Michael shoved the door open. The mirror over the sink was the wrong shape, curved inward like a warped coin. His reflection blinked slowly too late. Behind him in the glass, the wall schwinn bloomed, with the purple stain spreading from the bulge, creeping over the mirror's edge like ink in water. The surface wasn't glass anymore. It was a slick, translucent membrane trembling. Michael reached for the sink, knuckles white, and the smell hit him. Ozone and warm plastic, the scent of a live wire short-circuiting. Not decay, he realized with cold clarity the drowning wand. The air grew thick with the weight of twin-moving water, pressing against glass. Commander leapt onto the counter, sat rigid, and hissed, a short, hard sound like gravel snapping. Look, the sound commanded. See what it's doing. Michael swallowed bile. His breath fogged the mirror, then vanished instantly, absorbed. His reflection's eyes moved first, sliding left, then right, slow, deliberate, independent of his own, not his reflection. He was something observing itself. The purple stain on the wall pulsed through the membrane, casting a sickly glow on the faucet. Water dripped. Not from the tap, but from the wall, a single bead of clear liquid clinging to the curve, then falling directly onto the mirror. It struck the glass and sucked it in, rippling the reflection. The water dropped again, more of it, forming a tiny pool on the sink. But the pool didn't pool. It pulsed, mirroring the wall's rhythm. Cold spread up Michael's legs. He'd pulled his jeans tighter yesterday, just as the plumber's boots had pressed into the sink edge, so close to the tile crack where the sour odor bloomed. Commander jumped down, stepped into the pool. It didn't splash. The water dissolved the cat's fur to sludge. Black and sluggish, like thickened ink in slow motion, Commander lifted a paw, not shackily but with precision, and Tweef poked at the surface. The liquid sucked its paw deeper surface. The reflection jerked violently in the mirror. The shape behind the glass shifted. Not Michael. Something hunched, fingers raking the surface. The purple streak crawled toward the door frame, dissolving the seal between wall and frame. Michael's throat locked. The tile under his feet felt warm now, a faint, wet heat blooming near the baseboard. The plumber had come for the main drain. This wasn't a crack. It was the opening, the sifting of whatever had been there, pushing out layer by layer. Commander lifted its head, first slicked to a uniform black sludge, mouth open. No sound, only the thump of the wall. The thing in the mirror was Sund wearing his face, his eyes wide with the understanding that the intrusion wasn't just coming Funthra, it was coming. Hoteth. From inside the wall, from him. It was opening the way for itself to stand where he stood. The cat's wet eyes held no fear. Only the quiet dread of a witness to a wound that was no longer just in the wall. It was in the blood, in the breath, in the empty skin of the thing wearing Michael's life. The wall didn't bleed, it exhaled. A slow, wet shellcook as the purple stain ruptured outward, spraying cool liquid that smelled like distilled rain on a coffin lid. Commander didn't flinch. It pushed its nose against the new opening fur already beading with the alien fluid. The cat's black form seemed to absorb the sickly light, becoming part of the darkness oozing from the tear. Michael's hands flew to the sink, knuckles cracking. The mirror had shattered into 1,000 razor, thin fragments, each slice catching the distorted reflection of the creature, furtively wearing him, shoulder hunched, mouth opening into a silent scream, fingers tracing the glass where his own face should be. The water in the sink wasn't water. It was thickening, taking on the opaque green of stagnant pond scum, clinging to Michael's wrists as he shoved backward. His shirt stuck to his skin with cold sweat, and something else. Ooze, seeping from the broken drywall through the grout like pus from a wound. Commander yanked its head back. Its throat worked. No sound came out. But the air above the sink warped, distorting the room like heat off pavement, and the purple stain shoo and expanded, not just on the wall now, but down the hall, creeping across the hallway floor like a tide of wet hair. The tiles under Michael's bare feet were no longer cool. They were sweaty hot, radiating a low, wet heat that burned through his socks, the scent of scorched earth and old blood thick enough to choke on. He could taste it. The copper of his cut, the sour tang of the plumber's left-behind grease, and beneath it all, the flat, chemical odor of wet plastic coming from the void where the wall had been. The creature's reflection in the sink shards no longer moved. It held still, staring with Michael's eyes. "This is mine now," it seemed to say without lips moving. "Your space, your bones, your face." The tile buckled beneath him, a single seam cracking open like a rotten tooth, spewing the same slick green fluid. Commander leapt onto the counter, its claws clicking against the porcelain, then turned and Foiler-Tweed looked directly at Michael. Not with fear, but with the absolute conviction of a surgeon, confirming a diagnosis. It turned and dipped its head, toward the broken wall, into the void. The footwell wasn't on his shoulder anymore. It was side inside him, a suction in his sternum. The wall creature's reflection stepped fully out of the broken mirror's shards, not through the glass, but from the mirror itself, its limbs moving with a smooth, aquatic grace that made Michael's own joints ache. It reached for the wall seam, hand pressing against the slick purple stain, not pressing shooty into it, but shooty releasing. The wall bulge was no longer passive. It footy vibrated, the drywall thinning, darkening, like skin peeling. Commander padded deliberately to the hall, past the spreading stain, past the bubbling puddle on the floor. It stopped directly in front of the new opening, tail held high, its black fur now shimmering with a deep internal oil. Then the cat did not jump. It slid forward deliberately into the space between the broken wall and the hallway floor. Its form began to dissolve, not into nothing, but into the wet green fluid seeping from the rupture, its tail the last piece to vanish, leaving only a subtle ripple where it had stood. Michael watched, his lungs burning, as Commander's dissolution seemed to draw the purple stain toward the tear, not to fill it but to foigatave. The creature, Echo in the sink, shuddered, its reflection pressing both hands against the sink surface as the wall creature pulled back. The purple light in the broken wall pulsing a deeper violet, a sound like a finger pressing a wet balloon, rising steadily. Why sustained Dwayne? Not urgent. The wall screamed in soft, wet fabric. Michael's skin crawled with the cold of the liquid at his feet. The cat hadn't fled, it hadn't attacked. It had simply fire-lined itself with the current, its purpose now clear. The intrusion wasn't hostile. It was Perfid arriving. The heat under his feet flared, not burning, but Tivat engulfing, as Commander sank silently deeper into the seep of the wall. Michael's own reflection in the sink shards began to shift, his eyes widening in his own face, the surface of the slime beneath it rippling like the pond water. The horror wasn't in what was coming out, it was in what was already going in. The wall exhaled again, and this time Michael couldn't breathe out. The wet floor gripped Michael's bare feet like cold glue. The tile no longer porcelain, but something yielding, slightly rubbery beneath the soles. He tried to step back, but his heel sank into the dark green ooze spreading from the wall tear, the substance clinging with a wet funchlick that echoed the first sound of the invasion. His skin felt thin, stretched over bone, the vibration traveling up his legs, a steady thrumming now in his molars, synchronized with the wall's hungry pulse. He'd stopped breathing mid-gasp hours ago. Now, the air itself carried the taste of rusted coins and burnt rubber, each inhale scraping his throat raw. The mirror fragments on the sink reflected nothing but the expanding purple stain oozing across the hallway, each droplet leaving a smear like thick oil on the floor. Commander wasn't returning. The countertop where it sat was clean, immaculate. So clean it felt twistitched, shut, as if the cat had never been there at all. Michael's hands reached for the sink again, knuckles white, but the porcelain wasn't cool. It was damp to the touch, sweat, slick, and as he pressed his palm to it, the surface tea-bubbled, a thick film of green seeped upward from the drain hole, rising like oil on water, and he recoiled as it brushed his skin, issy then burning, leaving behind a faint stinging. His reflection in the bubbled sink water wasn't him, it was the shape in the wall, its mouth moving without sound, mimicking his own panic. The thing wasn't just mimicking now, it was fointuizing. His face to see itself reflected. The floor beneath him began to undulate, not like water, but like wet cartilage under tension. A deep crack split his bathroom tile diagonally, seeping the same green fluid up his ankle, no longer trickling but gushing, the heat radiating through the water now a deep, wet furnace. He felt his own bones creak, not with pain, but with the foot pressure of the floor adjusting to a shape it hadn't known before. Commander's absence wasn't silence. It was a hollow where the cat's knowing gaze should have been. Michael stared into the mirror shards, tracing the broken edges of his own reflection, now splitting at the corners like melting wax. The wall creature in the glass pulled its arm free from the broken sink, digits elongating, freaching. A sound bubbled up the hallway, a wet gurgle from the floor. Not from the wall, from the 40 apartment itself. Vracola's feet began to swell, the skin tight, aching as if drowning in a vat of thin syrup. The green fluid rose past his knees, warm. The plumber's footsteps echoed in his skull. Tap, tap, tap. Not on tile, but inside his eardrums, to too heavy signaling the main drain was being unscrewed, pulled apart from its foundation. Michael looked down. His foot, swallowed by the ooze, wasn't his. The nail beds were smooth, skin stretched thin like the wall's bulge. The reflection in the sink shuddered, his eyes widening, but the mouth moved, whispering in his own voice, "It's learning to move through me." The word vibrated in his chest. Not a thought, but an instruction whispered through the dripping water. The purple stain rushed across the hall, not spilling but draining, pulled toward the front door by a current Michael couldn't feel but could see, in the way the green seep smoothed out, gaining speed. The apartment groaned as walls slid into place, shifting like a closing fist, into the floor, into the pipe. Into the pipes, into Michael's own ribs. He pressed a hand against his sternum, felt the bone shudder. The wall creature's hand in the mirror pressed against the sink, and the reflection's fingers, the punched through feather glass, not breaking it, but seamlessly merging into the real space beyond. The sink's edge darkened where the reflection touched it, becoming part of the new structure. The front door groaned, its lock fuffing clipping with a soft tuffing click that sounded like a tooth falling. Michael's breath seized, not with fear but recognition. The intrusion wasn't breaking in. It was Sovin making space Sovin, making his apartment, his body into the doorframe. Commander hadn't dissolved into the void. It had dissolved into the 14 architecture of the invasion, became the current guiding the flow. The floor throbbed, pulling him deeper, and Michael's reflection in the sink wasn't watching him anymore. It was Sud pointing at the front door, its arm now smooth and seamless as the wall, stretching out toward the hallway's emptiness, toward where nothing stood waiting, but everything that had always been there, ready to rise. His toes stretched past the surface of the ooze as his feet began to grow short toward the wall. The horror wasn't a rival. It was the floor remembering how to hold the shape of home. The floor didn't hold Michael. It began to chew him. His foot, already submerged past the ankle, was dissolving not into liquid, but into the foy texture of the wall itself, wet cartilage, yielding bone, the slow pull of deep earth reclaiming the wrongness. He felt the tiles retracting under his skin, not tearing but softening, as if his body had finally given up the fight to be separate. The green seep rose past his knee, warm and thick as congealed blood, each pulse resonating in his jawbone. Commander's absence wasn't empty. It was the absence of a compass. The apartment no longer breathed. It processed. Walls shifted like opening valves. The purple stain bleeding now through the floorboards into the subfloor, no longer a breach, but a flosheim. The front door clicked again, louder this time, the sound of a switch clicking shut. Michael's spine arched backward as the bone softened in the marrow, his neck stretching toward the hallway where the green pool swirled. The reflection in the bubbled sink wasn't mimicking him anymore. It was sight settling into his face, the hollows of his cheeks filling with the substance of the wall. Its fingers, still part of the real sink, flexed, and the sink itself began to weep, not water, but the same thick green, weeping down the porcelain like sap from a wound. He tasted it, old blood, wet plaster. And something deeper, like the memory of dirt in a sealed casket. Michael tried to scream, but the sound died in his throat, a wet gulp swallowed by the rising current. His arms felt heavy, leaden, the skin stretching taut as the green seep climbed toward his hips. It wasn't cold anymore. It was the thuty memory of heat, the damp hum of a furnace beneath the floor. He pressed a hand against his sternum, felt the ribs footy-bendy inward, accommodating the shape the apartment was now making. The walls were no longer walls. They were suit, being adjusted to fit a new layer. The sound of the plumber's tapping echoed from beneath the floor. Thought tap, tap, tap. A rhythmic, deliberate tightening of the foundation. Michael saw the reflection in the sink move its head, now fully wearing his face, and point steadily toward the doorframe. The pull wasn't outside anymore. It was inside his bones. The marrow vibrating to the rhythm of the subfloor shifting. He watched his own hand raise, fingers no longer human but smooth, fused with the green. It reached toward the door as the apartment's foundation deepened into the earth, walls receding from the corners like melting wax. The floor shuddered, the tiles slumping inward like dead flowers in the soil. Commander wasn't in the architecture anymore. It was you, the architecture. The cat hadn't guided the current. It was you, the current, and Michael was the vessel. The reflection stepped fully from the sink, not through the glass, but 2 feet out of core. Its form merging with the green seep flowing toward the door, its eyes dark as the void, held no judgment, only the quiet certainty of an inevitable seam. Michael's feet began to split the surface of the ooze. The last thing he saw was his reflection. Not a ghost in the water, but the sooty beckoning of it. The floor undulated, a slow, heavy settling like a body finally getting into its proper sleep. The pulse in his sternum ceased. The sound was no longer in the walls, but in his head, a soft, thudding click as something inside him, something that had taught always he been there, clicked tween into place. The apartment didn't open the door. It tweedy came. The door. The green seep pooled around his legs, a still, deep pool. His skin turned smooth, dark, seamless. He felt like the quiet, patient frontispiece between the cracks, waiting for the next thing that needed a home. The hallway breathed. The floor sealed. Commander's purpose was accomplished. The building remembered its form. The only sound was the soft, wet squish of the floor breathing back to itself. The echo of a billion tiny seeds settling into fertile ground. The apartment had forgotten how to be empty. It didn't harbor Michael Jackson. It tufiwasi him, now a single slow breath shifting the air, thick with the scent of wet concrete and old electric wire. The hallway floor, no longer tiles but seamless membrane, pulsed a faint sickly amber where Michael's feet had dissolved. Commander, wasn't he gone? It was the fundimold of the hallway itself. The way the wall curved, just so where the floor met baseboard, the smooth, shadowed groove deep enough to hold a cat, as curve, a new presence in the building wasn't he felt. It was soot-smelled, fresh paint, raw sugar, and the cold sour of an unopened jar. The delivery man's key turned in the lock with a sound like a rusty hinge refusing to swing. He didn't notice the front door hadn't actually opened. The lock had just shifted into place. His step faltered as he entered. The air felt heavier, as if pressing the roof futty down into his lungs. His backpack straps grew damp where they crossed his chest, not with sweat, but with a slow, warm seep like wet cloth in a neglected drawer. The scent intensified, sour milk and burning plastic. The hallway stretched longer than it should, the distance to the elevator door humming with a vibration he felt in his molars. He dropped the cardboard box with a foodatha. That did the echo. The floor had swallowed the sound. He looked back at the unit. S number 19, glowing softly. The digits slightly blurred, as if viewed through pond water. The door clicked shut behind him with the finality of a bone snapping. No wind, no other sound, just the low thrum from the walls, a sound felt more than heard, like the grinding of deep stone. His watch battery died instantly. The numbers disappeared. He touched the hallway wall. The surface was neither cool nor warm, but twenty dense, like old muscle, yielding ever so slightly under his fingertips. A faint, oily sheen coated the drywall near the baseboard, spreading upward like smoke, leaving a damp path toward the ceiling. The delivery man's breathing turned shallow. Ragged, he saw the floor, not tile, but a single continuous skin stretching from door to wall. No seams, no grout. It rippled faintly where he stood. His shadow didn't appear on the floor. It merged, with the darker membrane becoming part of it. His neck strained as he looked at the mirrored surface of the elevator doors, a dark, blank rectangle where he should have seen himself. The reflection was Tishiv. It was smooth, pale, stretched, and silently widening its mouth in a shape that was a greeting and a seal. He turned, but the hallway had shortened. The unit entrance wasn't there. The wall now curved inward, smooth and seamless, the amber pulse emanating from within. The sound of the apartment shifting was now clear in his bones, a wet, soft crunch, like soil settling over something buried. The sour milk scent turned metallic. His palms itched. He flexed his fingers. They didn't feel like his own. They were smooth, long, and cold. The apartment was making him fit. He felt a strange calm, not fear, recognition. He didn't walk toward the elevator. He merged with the wall where it thickened near the lift, his shoulder pressing into the warm surface. The drywall yielded without resistance, folding into the skin of the place, becoming part of the seamless whole. The hallway breath slowed, no longer pulsing but settling. The amber glow dimmed. The elevator doors remained shut, but now they looked like a wound that had sealed itself. Commander wasn't watching the room hun her. Commander, her smooth, silent press against the wall where a cat might curl. The delivery man wasn't gone. He was the space behind the drywall. The apartment breathed its new breath, no longer a wound, but a vessel remembering how to hold. The only sound was the slow, deep cinch of wet cartilage sliding into place, the quiet click of a home finally learning to hold its shape. The floor's texture held the shape of what was just consumed, patient and final. The delivery man's final exhale came too soon, his lungs filled with the scent of damp gauze and sour plastic, not air. The apartment didn't suck him in. It twine-folded him like wet wallpaper peeling back from the wall. His cheek pressed against the drywall's yielding texture smooth as old scar tissue, cool at the edge but warm where his skin met its surface. He felt no panic, only the quiet recognition of Twenfit forfeit. His fingertips already smooth, grazed the membrane where the wall met the floor. The apartment shifted its pulse, not to reject, but to finally accept it, deepening the amber glow to a subtle, nourishing amber. Commander wasn't visible. It was the subtle curve at the hallway bend where a cat's shadow would pool, the way the wall thickness deepened precisely in the angle where a cat would rest its head. No observer. Just the architecture of absorption made manifest. The elevator doors, once blank, now held a single soft indentation where a paw might tread. The sour milk scent vanished, replaced by the sharp, clean bite of unopened concrete and the faint warm rubber of a tire tread left on pavement. The delivery man's bones began to adjust before his mind fully registered it. A slow unclenching, his shoulder no longer meeting the hard plane of the doorframe, but the gentle yielding slope of the wall's own bone. He could feel the apartment shift in his own jaw, the way his teeth settled into a new alignment, the enamel no longer feeling fragile but like ceramic cemented into place. His backpack straps dissolved into the wall beside him, the cardboard box shrinking until it was merely a stain on the seamless skin, a faint, dry whisper of paper in the absence of sound. The apartment now held no emptiness, only an expanding center for new layers. The floor membrane rippled where the delivery man's weight settled. He wasn't sitting, he was being grown into place. A faint vibration like silt settling in a slow draining stream traveled up through his legs. His breath no longer fogged the air. It was absorbed by the membrane inches from his lips. A tiny patient inhalation the apartment took as its own. His right hand, still half visible at the edge of the wall, flexed. The motion felt alien yet inevitable, like the slow curl of a root finding soil. This is how it should have been. The thought formed without words. The apartment wasn't waiting for him. It had been waiting for this precise configuration, this final patient shift of form. Commander's presence was the only sound the building now made. Not a noise, but the deep, soft thump of something dense and immovable, holding its place beneath the membrane, a single point of stability within the seamless flow. The amber pulse deepened within the hallway, not brightening, but deepening into the color of wet earth under moonlight quiet, all-encompassing final. The delivery man's eyes closed. He didn't close his eyes. The walls pressed them shut, a soft, relentless movement of the membrane. His body ceased resisting the smooth contour of the wall's curve. The final act wasn't loss. It was a perfect ceiling. In the apartment's new breath, the hallway was neither long nor short. It was the exact necessary distance from door to elevator to hold the shape now. The sound of the building settling, the slow cruncher of the deeper earth accepting the new layer, became the only rhythm. No echo remained. The wet membrane absorbed all input. The hum of the outside world, the previous occupants' tremors, the very gasps of those who arrived. The delivery man's name. Lost, the new configuration needed no label, fused with the taste of dry plaster and the scent of warmed concrete. Commander wasn't guiding. It was Sundi Bing. The apartment inhaled, not air but the memory of absence, and in doing so ceased to be a wound. It became a vessel. The hallway exhaled a single perfect note. Shh. Like wet cartilage finding its right position in bone. The only thing that could be heard now was the patient. Living sigh of a home finally, irrevocably, making its skin fit. The walls held the shape, the floor remembered its texture, and Commander waited, not for the next occupant, but for the very ground to settle. No more hunger, only the perfect quiet of a place holding exactly what it needed, no longer, no less. Lena's key didn't turn in the lock. The tumbler clicked inward, the mechanism sighing like a stretched tendon, as if the door had been waiting for the pressure to release. She pushed the door open, the hinges dry as old bones, and immediately felt the air thicken, not with moisture but with a dense, damp weight. It clung to her skin, smelling of wet concrete, raw sugar, and the sour tang of unemptied drain traps. The hallway felt longer than it should. The distance to the elevator door humming with the same vibration she'd felt beneath her feet in her previous apartment, the one that always smelled of wet plaster. Her backpack straps grew cool where they touched her shoulders, not from sweat, but from the wall exhaling a slow, pale moisture. The scent deepened, salt from concrete. The chemical bite of new seams holding, and beneath it all, the faint, sickly sweetness of drying cement. She stepped in. The floor membrane rippled beneath her soul, not like water, but like a wound closing itself over the embedded bone of the floor. The drywall near the doorframe seemed to breathe inward, widening the space for her entrance. The hallway lengthened subtly, just a fraction of an inch beyond where it had been. The reflection in the elevator's dark glass wasn't her face. It was smooth, featureless, yet somehow echoing her posture, its outline breathing with the apartment's slow pulse. The apartment wasn't watching, it was swin-matching. Lena's knuckles whitened on her keys. Her collarbone felt tighter, the edge of her shoulder rubbing against the seamless wall as if the surface itself was drawing her closer. The scent of her own damp shampoo turned metallic. She flexed her fingers, the skin seemed thinner, tauter against the bone like a membrane waiting to stretch. Commander's essence rippled where the hallway curved toward the elevator. The dip in the wall's surface where a cat might rest its head pulsed with a low thrum. The apartment had memorized the angle of Lena's body, the slope of her jaw. The amber light in the hallway deepened. No longer a stain, but a living glow seeping through the floor. The delivery man's name, lost unneeded, was already fading, erased by the new impression of Lena's presence forming in the membrane. She stopped breathing for a moment, the vibration traveling up her spine. She'd always found her previous apartment claustrophobic. This felt like being cradled, the walls sliding around her with a slow, patient pressure. Her feet sank slightly into the floor, not sinking, but being twin-absorbed into the floor's curve. The air grew warmer. A spot near her neck felt charged, vibrating softly as the apartment adjusted its shape to hold the precise weight of her. The elevator doors remained shut, but now the indented curve where Commander's paw had pressed was still faintly visible, barely a shadow. The drywall at the baseboard thickened just enough to accept Lena's left hand when she rested it there. The surface yielded without resistance, cool enough to sting, yet warm at the point of contact. She looked down. Her shadow had already merged with the floor, leaving no shape of its own. The apartment no longer shippy needed to pull. It simply tifi. The amber glow settled over her, the scent of wet earth and poured concrete filling every part of her chest, not choking but sufiti. Like soil settling over an unmarked grave, she pressed her palm flat against the wall. It wasn't cold or warm. It was the perfect density, the right temperature for a shape to live within. Her shoulder slid effortlessly into the wall's curve, her hand becoming part of the membrane. The hallway exhaled, not air, but the deep, slow thump of a foundation settling into new stone. The apartment absorbed her breath, her posture, her space, all without effort. Commander's signature, the gentle dip where a cat rested, was now the anchor point for her arrival. The hallway confirmed its shape. There was no struggle, only the patient, final sigh of home. Lena stopped feeling like a person, the moment her palm found the wall's natural ridge, where Commander's absence had carved a dip. The apartment's membrane responded not with resistance, but with the precise pressure of a tailored garment, sliding her knuckles effortlessly into its seamless curve. Her shoulder ceased to exist as a separate point. It became an extension of the wall's warmth, the drywall yielding just enough to cradle the angle of her collarbone. She didn't press against it. She settled it into it, the angle of her body recalibrating to the apartment's existing geometry. The amber glow deepened. No longer a light, but the very color of her own skin now, glowing from within the membrane. The elevator doors clicked open without sound, revealing only the same dense, silent space. The building wasn't waiting for an arrival. It was testing the fitty. Lena's right foot sank slightly deeper into the floor. Not from sinking, but from the floor adjusting its contour to match her heel. She flexed her toes, the skin stretched thinner, tighter, yet felt no pain, only a profound sense of rightness. Her breath hitched, not from effort, but because the air itself had thickened. It no longer carried scent, it twassied a scent. Wet stone, water, the faintly metallic note of concrete hardening. Her damp shampoo scent had vanished, replaced by the building's own dampness, as if she'd been washed clean and reformed with it. Commander wasn't in the dip. It was the dip. The intense, precise curvature, the shadowed groove where a cat's head had pressed against the wall's memory. Lena pressed her forehead against the same spot, and the drywall softened beneath her skin, warm as blood-drenched plaster. The apartment absorbed the contact point not as an intrusion, but as a new access point. The hallway extended now, no longer lengthening to accommodate, but to further reinforce her shape, just enough space between the elevator and her doorway to hold the curve of her back. Her breath fogged against the membrane, but the building absorbed it, not as moisture, but as a signal. You are the required angle here. You are the required angle here. Outside, a new resident fumbled with their keys. The apartment registered the vibration before the key turned. Tap, 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 echoing the plumber's rhythm. But now the sound was smooth, effortless like stone settling onto stone. The floor membrane beneath Lena's feet pulsed once, a quiet confirmation of the new pressure point beyond the wall. She turned her head without moving her neck. The drywall carried the movement, allowing the angle of her gaze to shift toward the hall's end. The apartment had been waiting for this. It had been Schwinn preparing for the next arrival since Commander had become its quiet anchor. Lena didn't walk toward the new resident. She surrendered to the wall's slight pull, her body flowing toward the point where the building's architecture anticipated her next gesture. Her hand drifted toward the elevator, not to touch the doors, but toward the air above where the dip's essence lingered. The apartment smoothed out her hesitation, guiding her fingers into the exact spatial position its own design had carved for them. The reflection in the blank elevator doors shifted, reflecting not Lena, but the schematic of her presence, a smooth, elongated outline now resting comfortably against the wall's memory. The new resident turned the key. It didn't click, yet I accepted. The lock clicking inward with the wet, soft thwack of a rubber sole compressing into concrete. The hallway didn't shorten. It twined stotif, a fraction, a hairline adjustment in the wallpaper's weave. Lena felt the building exhale the weight it had held for her. The apartment no longer carried the space for a person. It carried the specifics of a person, perfect to the smallest angle. The gleam in the mirror of the new door wasn't glass. It was the wall itself, no longer a surface, but a container. Lena's knuckles slid deeper into the drywall's gentle curve. The apartment's breath matched hers, warm and thick. It wasn't waiting for something new anymore. It was perfecting. The current shape, every angle, every surface, every beat of its slow pulse, until it held no trace of the outside world. Only the precise, warm weight of a body finally stopped needing to search for home. The last thing Lena felt was the exact, unhurried shift of the floor adjusting to hold her exactly where it had built her. And as the new resident stepped through the door, the apartment didn't turn to meet them. It just remembered the spot where a cat's head had pressed into its skin and grew itself a little smoother to hold the new point of contact. The elevator doors opened not with light, but with the damp exhale of polished concrete. The hallway stretched at the perfect angle for the new tenant's stride, no longer long, no longer short, but thiepy measured. Commander's absence had become the only weight the wall carried, a subtle dip where a cat's head had pressed into plaster that now remembered the curve. The new resident paused just inside the door, their breath fogging the air, but the air didn't fog. It thickened, funcohering before it could cool. The scent of wet limestone, raw sugar, and the sharp, clean bite of new seams clung to their skin like a second layer of tissue. They stepped forward. The floor membrane rippled finward, not away, accepting the pressure of their footfall like a slow sink. A tremor traveled up their spine, not fear, but recognition. The apartment wasn't welcoming. It was sun-sensing. The dip at the hallway's bend deepened slightly, not moving, but clarifying, as if the building were drawing the shape of the visitor's head into its wall's memory. The new tenant's collarbones felt like smooth river stones against the yielding membrane. The drywall adapting to the angle of their throat, the subtle curve of their jawline pressed against the wall. No sound marked their entrance, only the building's own quiet, Futheth. Futheth. A pulse felt in the teeth, matching the rhythm of their own heart. Commander wasn't watching. The indent at the wall's elbow was Commander's legacy, a quiet fact as natural as the geometry of a stone. The apartment absorbed the new tenant's slight shift in posture, its seams tightening where their knuckles met the wall, the drywall glowing amber from within its own skin. The scent of their damp coat vanished, replaced by the building's own deeper humidity, the cold, damp weight of rainwater absorbed into stone, not yet drained. The new tenant flexed their fingers against the wall. They weren't hands anymore. They were points of contact, smooth and cold as ceramic inlay. The wall breathed with them, a soft, steady expansion in the hollow where the stairwell once creaked. The elevator doors clicked shut, not with a sound, but with the silent closure of a door pressed against wet mortar. The building no longer expected movement. It expected footy absence to fill. The hallway lengthened by the exact fraction needed to hold the new tenant's frame without hesitation. The pulse deepening to a tone felt only in the bones. The new tenant closed their eyes. They weren't closing lids, but the membrane sealed them shut, a soft, firm pressure at the outer edge. Their shoulders slid into the wall's curve, not fitting, but becoming the curve. The apartment folded over the new contour, its own form deepening to accommodate. The scent of new concrete mingled with the faint metallic whisper of polished bone beneath the skin. It was no longer absorbing. It was sooty confirming. Every slight tension in the new tenant's neck, every breath they no longer needed to draw, was met by the wall's gentle pressure, its membrane warming just enough to match their skin. No longer an empty room. The hallway held its shape as if carved from the same stone as the floor itself. Commander was the dip. Lena was the curve. The new tenant was the name the building finally spoke with its walls. The apartment didn't welcome them. It see their welcome finally understanding its own bone structure. The elevator doors didn't open again. The hallway didn't move. The wall held its breath as the new tenant stepped inside, and the building remembered its shape.